According to my watch, it's 2 o'clock. We'll call the meeting of the Banks and Banking Committee to order. And in keeping with request I've always honored from former Chairman James Mills, if he wouldn't mind, I would ask Representative Nix if he would open us up with a word of prayer.
Yep, absolutely.
Preacher, what's his number?
19.
19.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day and for so many blessings you give to us. We just pray now for your divine presence and divine knowledge as you guide us, that we would do the things you would have us to do to benefit the people of Georgia. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Preacher.
You're welcome.
Normal procedure, I would like to introduce all the new members of the committee. Now, we're going to do that next meeting because we've got several members who have subcommittees that they're going to have to go and probably vote at. So we're going to move along today in the interest of time. The only order of business that we have for voting is to adopt our committee rules. For the new committee members, these are basically the same rules that we had last year. Our former members may recognize them. They're simple and they're brief, which I find to be two good virtues in a lot of things, particularly in having committee rules. Our members, the main rule here is there are 6 members, is a quorum. And we always want to have a full committee when we take up any measure, because anything that we take up is important. But we know that there are a lot of committees, a lot of important other things going on. So our quorum will be 6. The rest is pretty self-explanatory. Are there any questions concerning the rules that you see? Any questions? Do I have a motion that we adopt the rules that you have before you?
Make a motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second to the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. It's unanimous. The rules are adopted. I have a special treat for me today for the committee. Some folks from down in my neck of the woods from Statesboro, Georgia Southern University. I was hoping that Chairman Earhart would be able to be here because Chairman Earhart's subcommittee did a lot of work last year making what we are talking about, this presentation, possible in funding the eminent chair along with BB&T. Our guest today, if you have not met him, Dr. Brooks Keel, is president of Georgia Southern University, a good friend of mine and a quail slayer of the first order. And Bill Wells, College of Business, Georgia Southern University, and they're going to come to tell us about the steps they're taking for the chair and what good it's doing at Georgia Southern University. Dr. Keel, Mr. Wells. Do we have
like 2? And is that switch on the mic? I think it should be a red light.
There we go. Chairman Morris, members of the committee, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here to represent Georgia Southern University and to thank you for what you're doing on this committee and for the service of the state of Georgia. I want to take just a few minutes, give you a brief overview of what we're doing with regards to banking, and then I will turn the microphone over to the Dean of the College of Business, who is truly the expert here. We're grateful for the trust that this committee and your colleagues in the Georgia General Assembly have placed in Georgia Southern University and indeed the entire university system of Georgia. Mr. Chairman, if you will allow, let me give you just a brief overview of Georgia Southern. It's hard for me to talk about Georgia Southern and be brief, but I promise I will be respectful of your time. This past fall of 2012, we hit a record enrollment of 20,574 students. The average freshman SAT for this past fall semester was also a record high of 1115. Mr. Chairman, as you probably know, I'm a native of Augusta, Georgia. If I had tried to apply to Georgia Southern when I was applying to colleges, they wouldn't let me in. If they had let me in, they sure as heck wouldn't let me out. So we're very, very proud of the quality of our students. Georgia Southern student body now includes students from 49 U.S. states and more than 100 countries from around the world. The only state we have not been able to get a student in is North Dakota. If any of you know of a student that is from North Dakota, please let me know. For the third year in a row, U.S. News & World Report has ranked Georgia Southern among the top 10 most popular universities in the country. This year we were ranked 7th, behind Harvard, Stanford, and Brigham Young. Not bad company for a little university in South Georgia. We are truly a...
Could you repeat that again and make sure everybody understood what
Yes,
you
sir.
just said about Georgia Southern University?
Yes,
I'd like
sir.
to hear that again.
Yes, sir, thank you. For the third year in a row, U.S. News & World Report has ranked Georgia Southern among the top 10 most popular universities in the country. This past year we were ranked 7th, behind Harvard, Stanford, and Brigham Young. We're very, very proud of that. I think it speaks highly of the interest that the students in this state and indeed this country and beyond have in Georgia Southern. We are truly a Georgia-wide university. In fact, the county we get more students from than any other county is Gwinnett, followed by Bullock, Fulton, Cobb, and Chatham counties. And we are, for the last several years, have recruited more than 50% of our freshman class come from the Atlanta metropolitan area. And we're very, 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 very proud of that as well. We are the largest university south of I-20. Georgia Southern takes its role in economic impact very, very seriously. We had an overall economic impact of $512 million and created nearly 7,000 jobs in Statesboro and Bullock County area, with more than $820 million of an economic development impact in the coastal region of the state during the 2011-2012 fiscal year. The study that was performed about our economic impact showed that Georgia Southern student spending accounted for more than $266 million and resulted in 3,797 jobs in Statesboro and Bullock County area. Although sometimes we complain about having a lot of students around, Statesboro loves the 20,574 students we bring to the community and what that means for the economy of our region. The College of Business Administration is one of our largest colleges on campus with over 3,555 students. Many of the students that choose the College of Business consider banking as their field of study, and thus the funding of the eminent scholar in banking last year will make a great impact on educating our students and providing services to Georgia's banking industry. Last year, we were very grateful to have the support of Representative Butch Parrish and Representative Earl Earhart, and indeed the entire General Assembly in this committee, regarding the funding of the BB&T Eminent Chair in Banking. And obviously, we're very, very grateful to our colleagues at BB&T for their initial support of this contribution that allowed us to seek the matching funding, which you were so gracious and generous in providing. Given the issues that continue to plague community and rural banks, we're excited about the opportunities that lie ahead. The position we will fund through this eminent chair will provide information and assistance with addressing policy issues faced by rural community banks, especially in areas of regulatory compliance, which places a highly regressive cost burden on smaller banks in Georgia. The success of the Center for Excellence in Financial Services, that Dr. Wells will talk more about in a moment, has enhanced the visibility of our programs at Georgia Southern University. In turn, this visibility has created new opportunities to expand our support for local, rural community banks that have proven to be the most vulnerable to the effects of the recent recession. The matching funding will permit additional technical and administrative support for the center, freeing up the director to expand community outreach service in several of the following areas, including to extend the BankStat subscription base through other areas of the state, initially targeting rural community banks in geographic areas surrounding existing regional client relationships in Augusta, Washington, Macon, and Columbus. It will allow us to expand our strategic planning consulting services, especially for banks under regulatory agreements. Ratings of 3 and 4. The risk-based planning approach is considered a best practice by the regional offices of the FDIC and the Federal Reserve Bank. Existing work with 2 bank clients located in rural counties has led to ratings upgrades and releases from existing regulatory arrangements. Allow us to increase our activities and participation in financial education programs with community groups and customer groups, and inviting local banks in rural counties largely overlooked and outside the accessible reach of resources based in Atlanta. Will allow us to serve as an independent objective resource for legislatures in addressing the policy issues faced by rural community banks, especially in the areas of regulatory compliance, which places a highly regressive cost burden on the smaller banks. And Mr. Chairman, we certainly ask that you never hesitate to contact us if we can be of any service to you, to this committee and your colleagues. If nothing else, it will give us a chance to repay the generosity that you have shown towards Georgia Southern. will also allow us to expand our services to rural-based community credit unions. Based upon the existing relationships in Bullock and Chatham counties, support in terms of strategic planning, marketing, and price strategies will be provided. Mr. Chairman, at this time I'd like to introduce the committee to Georgia Southern University's College of Business Dean Bill Wells. Bill will talk more about the future of the Financial Services Center, the eminent chair in banking, and how we're educating banking students on our campus. And please allow me to again personally thank you for your tremendous support you've given to Georgia Southern and indeed the University System of Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to tell our story and what our future is going to be like at Georgia Southern University. In the fall of 2001, I was hired primarily because I was willing to teach a bank management course. So I taught bank management. It was the one course we offered. Over the past 11 and a half years, we've developed 4 additional courses to support bank management majors: simulation courses, financial institution, a loan evaluation course. The number of majors has grown. We hired Ed Sibbald, who is a retired banker with 30 years experience, who really took to the classroom like a duck to water. I've never seen anybody more natural than he was, especially as a second career. The students love him. He helped grow the major. And the relationship that Ed has established over the last 7 years with community banks in our area has been astonishing. He initiated a community banker symposium. This March will be the 7th annual symposium. Last year we had a little over 100 members from the banking community that attend. He arranges guest speakers from the Fed, from the FDIC, economists, and it kind of gives an insight as to what the future holds for community bankers in the state of Georgia. The news hasn't always been good in the last few years, but it's relevant information, and Ed, as our executive in residence and the director of the Center for Excellence in Financial Services, has done an outstanding job. Now we're ready to go to, to use a cliche, to the next level. To have an eminent scholar in place is really going to allow us to do more in the state of Georgia for banking, to give Georgia Southern recognition outside the area, to provide services for community banks, for the community, in addition to the things we've already been doing through Ed and the bank faculty, bank management faculty we have now. So this is going to be a wonderful opportunity for us. Our next step is to initiate a search, which will come up in the not too distant future. And what we want to do is find the right person. We want to find someone with a PhD in finance or economics, with a specialty in banking, that can build a relationship with the Fed, with the FDIC, community bankers. They can really do a lot. We're going to ask for a lot. We're going to expect a lot. So we want the right person to come in and make a difference for us. This is a wonderful opportunity for Georgia Southern and the College of Business Administration, and we're very thankful for the matching gift from the legislature, and we're thankful for what BB&T has done for us.
Mr. Chairman, we'd be delighted to answer any questions that you or the members of the committee would have of us, or any other comments that you would like to make.
Well, I would like to ask, first, as far as job placement, I mean, tell me, is there a typical position that your students, I mean, tell me
Sure.
job placement.
Okay. As you might imagine, job placement's been tough in the last few years. It's starting to change a little bit. A lot of banks are shrinking, not hiring. But we're placing students in bank management training programs, typically go in as a loan officer, or someone doing the backroom work, loan evaluation. Some of our students go right into branch management training. So different banks have different types of programs. BB&T is one of the biggest. So BB&T has 2 classes each year, and they take our students into that for as long as I've been here. They'll take 1 or 2 or sometimes more depending on how big their class is. Other students will go into a community bank, and of course when you work for a community bank, you do a little bit of everything. You do customer service, you do loan evaluation, and those kinds of things. So what we're trying to do is prepare our students. One of the things that Ed Sibbald has done in creating the simulation class and also doing the loan portfolio analysis class is to have our students ready to hit the ground running when they come out. Typically, a student would graduate and then have to, basically be trained for everything from the bank. We're trying to give them a little bit of advantage there. It's been well received by bankers throughout the state and outside the state of Georgia occasionally.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. I like what you said about the person you're trying to
find, and I hope you will try to find somebody who's got experience in the smaller bank area. I remember when I was in college a long time ago, the business courses I was in, they all seem to be preparing you to run General Motors. If you were not going to run General Motors, they really didn't have anything for you. So I hope as you make a search that you will try to find somebody who has that interest and has the some connection to the smaller community banks. I've worked in those banks. In fact, I worked for BB&T at one time, but that has an interest in that and not just looking at from some really higher level position. I just think that works so well.
Well, and that's a good point. It's real easy to hire someone who never had anything to do with banking, has a PhD, and can write theoretically about it. But what we need in this area, and for us, and our niche, is community banking. So that's why I said it may be difficult. We're going to ask a lot of this person. So we want to hire the right person for this job that'll help the state of Georgia and help Georgia Southern.
Thank you.
And if I can add to that, if you allow, one of the things that has impressed me most about Georgia Southern is the hands-on training that our students across the board receive. I think we typically think of that in terms of engineering, where you can actually, it's more visible. But I've been impressed with our College of Business, how it does train these young men and young women to be work-ready when they graduate. They have all the theory behind business, banking, accounting, marketing, whatever field that they go into, and banking is certainly no different. But more importantly than that, they have the work skills that are required to put them to work right away. This is important for a lot of reasons, of course. It makes our students very marketable when they graduate in terms of job opportunities, but it allows the businesses that hire them, the banks that hire them, their training is shrunk tremendously, and the expense that they have to go through to try to get these young people ready to actually go on the floor, if you will, is reduced tremendously based off the sort of the hands-on generalist training that we provide. So we're very, very cognizant of the question that you ask and the concern that you have, and I think that Georgia Southern is suited very, very well for providing the workforce that's going to be needed in banking as we move ahead.
And we have students from small communities who want to go back home and work in the banks there. So, and we fill that niche for them. We're not trying to push students, everybody to go to Atlanta, go to the big city, work for the big bank. We want to get them prepared for what they want to do and where they can do the most good. And oftentimes that's to go back home.
Yeah, thank you. Representative Smith, I believe, has a question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for coming forward and bringing us informative information. One question, in light of the fact that NAFTA was passed some years ago, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Typically, we don't have to go to international companies to get international expertise and inclusion of international companies within the state of Georgia. There's been a significant influx of international corporations, companies coming to Georgia. Have there been any classes to teach our, especially finance and banking students, about euros and inclusion of euros, the European currency, within the framework of what we're actually looking at?
Sure, good question. We oftentimes overlook the fact that that we are in an international community. We think in terms of someone going back and working at a bank in Jessup, Georgia. But what you have to let the students know and train them for is that we are part of an international community, no matter where you're working. So we do that. We build international components into all of our courses. We have some courses that are specifically international in the title, but we try to have some kind of component in every course so that there's some exposure to that and some background information. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Well, I'm sure these gentlemen will stay around if you have any questions. I know we've got other things that we need to do, but that was a very informative and encouraged. You know, when we spend $500,000, we certainly want to know that it's serving a good and valid purpose, and it sounds like it is. I think the committee would agree. Certainly those of us in rural areas who desire and need the support for community banks, particularly in this regulatory environment. It has changed a great deal, and I'm afraid may change some more. So we're encouraged. Dean, Doctor, thank you very much for coming and visiting with us. So there are no more questions. Dr. Keel, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity and for the faith and trust that you placed in us. Believe me, it's something we take very seriously, and we promise not to let you down. Please feel free to have us back anytime. We'd be delighted to.
Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.